Okay, so we're going to go over first how to just build some really basic placeholder millwork in your project that we can then potentially add more information to in the future, or go through and detail it. So let's go over to the first floor plan. Oops, there we go. Get rid of that stuff. So let's give ourselves a pair of walls just to have something to work on from. Give a little context to the model here. So when we go to create a component, we have really two different options. One is to model it in place, and one is to place a component from an outside source. So you can see here, the placing component is going to be, stuff that's kind of floating around, furniture. Loose furniture is a great example. Model in place is going to be more integrated into the architecture of the building, so maybe a bar would be a good example for that. So we're going to do both. So let's click on model in place, and then it's going to ask you to select the category. Now this is important. Make sure you select casework. There's no real millwork option in here, so everything that you make is going to be kind of casework. If you don't do this, we won't be able to properly filter things in the future, so make sure you hit casework. And then it's going to ask you for your name. Now, we want to not just call this bar, because all the different componentry in the model, it gets sorted into one big list. So everything from lights to this bar and so on is all kind of together. So we're still working through our convention for naming, but the basics of it, I'll pull this over here, is these 5 fields. The first field is the Revit category abbreviation, then the component type, a descriptor, a manufacturer if needed, and the hosting status. So we're not going to get too deep into this, but for now, we'll just keep in mind that we want to name it case, right? So move that out of the way. So at the very least, we want to call it case for casework. An underscore, we'll call it case underscore bar. Okay. So you see over here, we have this variety of tools to create geometry within this model in place component. So let's just start out with an extrusion. It's probably the easiest one. So we are on the work plane first floor, and we're going to start that extrusion at 0 feet, and then we want to go up to 3 feet. So we'll just start in here, and I'm just going to draw, I don't know, some kind of bar. Right. Make sure that's 2 feet. That looks pretty good. Let's finish that. So I finished this first piece of geometry, but that doesn't mean that we're done with this command yet. We're actually still inside of this model here, you can see. So that enables us to go back to create and create another extrusion, or another blend, or revolve, or sweep, or void forms that cut into the space, into the thing itself. So we could cut a void through this bar with an extrusion, or so on. Let's make another extrusion and kind of give like a top to the bar. So we're going to come here, go like 2'6", and we're just kind of sketching this out here. We don't have to be too precious about it, because we're going to kind of come back in and make things a little cleaner. So zoom in here. I'm going to align this with AL, it's a hotkey for align, and I'm going to align this one as well, AL here. Now you see it gives you this little lock option. So I can lock this sketch to the lower bar, so that if I move this bit, it moves with it. I'm not going to do that for now, but just it's a handy thing to keep in mind. I'm going to dimension this here. DI is the hotkey for dimension. Escape out twice out of there. Grab this and tell it to be 6 inches by typing 0 space 6. And I can delete that. So then the last thing we want to do is we want to start this extrusion at 3 feet. And we want to end it at 3 feet 2 inches. So that's going to give a sort of lip to the bar. Let's finish that. That's not going to be available in here because it's just going to, we got to finish this model first. So let's hit finish. And we're also sort of above the view range, I think, is probably what's going on. So if we go over to 3D view, there we go. We can kind of see the bar. So because we built this in place, when we click on it, we have the option to edit in place. Now you see it sort of groups all these different things together into one object. And it gives you little edges that you can stretch and pull things. And you can actually align edges. So if I do AL, and I like grab this surface of wall here, I can align that edge and sort of send it out there. I could lock this out, so it's kind of part of the building. It's a little bit integrated with the building is probably the best way to say it. Now the other option is to model something outside of the project and bring it in. So something that you're going to be repeating a couple times, like furniture, or something that's sort of just floating around on its own, like a host stand, for instance, would probably want to get modeled outside the project and brought in. So to do that, we're going to go to Architecture, hit the pull down next to Component, and we're going to hit Place Component. Now, we have to model the component before we can actually place it. So to do that, go to File, hover over New, don't click it, and then hit Family. Within here, you're going to select Casework Template File and hit Open. Now, you want to make sure you hit Casework instead of going down and grabbing something like Generic, because these will not have the right type, the right category assigned to them. The nice thing about these is that they already have the category assigned. So open that up. It's going to open up this kind of extra browser. So we're going to do something similar. We're just going to kind of make an extrusion, going to make a box, and you'll notice they have these kind of reference planes in here with width and depth information sort of built in by default. We'll go over how to build parametric families and sort of lock this geometry to these reference planes so that this stuff can kind of flex. So if you want to make this piece of millwork, 2 feet or 4 feet or 6 feet or so on, you can do that really easily. But for now, this is just going to be kind of a dumb box. So we want to sell it to start at 0 feet and go up to 3. And we're going to finish that. And there we are. So it has these grips just like we had in the previous work environment, but we're still sort of in this family editor. So before we load it in, let's save it. So we're going to save as a family. And I'm just going to dump this on my desktop here. And again, we want to be careful to make sure we name it not something just, host stand, right? So case _ host stand. And then if we needed to be more specific, we could just say, case host stand restaurant or front. I don't know. Okay. So then we're going to load this into the project. We couldn't create it here, so we're going to head over to this first floor. If we hit this pull down and hit place a component, you can see here it loaded this in, and now we can place it here. All right, so there we go. Now, if we take a look in 3 dimensions, you'll notice these two things kind of behave differently, right? When you click on this one, it has all these little grips that we can use to modify it. In here, those grips are actually buried inside the family, right? So if we click on this, the option is to edit the family. If we click on this, the option is edit in place. So that's really the difference between these two types of objects. They operate somewhat similarly, but they're kind of unique in their own ways. So where these are, if you wanted to find them in the browser, you go over here and hit plus next to families, and then plus next to casework, and here we go. Case _ bar, case _ host stand, right? So again, it's important to keep these organized by the word case in front, because if I take a look at these different family options, you can see casework, doors, doors is actually a bad example, but electrical fixtures, furniture, generic models, light fixtures, plumbing fixtures, all this stuff is all loaded in from that load component tool. So when we do place component, this list is going to get really crowded really fast. So make sure you name it case.